Have you ever noticed how reality seems to shift the moment you truly pay attention to it? How the problems that once felt impossible suddenly become more approachable the moment you observe them directly? How relationships transform when you become aware of the subtle patterns that form between you and someone else? There's something happening here, something most people never fully grasp, something fundamental about the structure of reality itself. Once you understand it, you can't unsee it. And this isn't some mystical theory or vague New Age philosophy. It's been tested in labs, documented by scientists. It's reshaping what we know about existence at its core. The observer effect isn't just a strange anomaly from quantum physics experiments. It's a hidden mechanism that governs how your awareness interacts with the world. When this truly lands, the way you approach life, your relationships, your struggles, and even your own potential begins to shift.
Every moment of your life, you are observing. You observe your thoughts, you sense your emotions, you notice what surrounds you. But here's the remarkable part. Observation isn't passive. You're not a silent spectator sitting in the audience of your own life. You are an active participant in shaping what unfolds. Most people move through life unaware of this. They believe reality is fixed, a rigid force they must react to, but it isn't. Reality doesn't just happen to you, it happens through you, because of the way you're aware of it. And this isn't just a poetic idea, it's measurable, observable science. When physicists first encountered the observer effect, they were working with subatomic particles. What they found shattered everything they thought they knew. These particles behaved differently depending on whether they were being observed. When observed, they acted like particles. When not observed, they acted like waves. Just the act of observation was altering the fundamental structure of reality. And this isn't something that only applies to the microscopic world. The principles of quantum mechanics extend far beyond, into the way we think, the way we experience life, the reality we're living in right now. You've likely experienced this without naming it. Think about a time when you were struggling, maybe with a relationship, maybe with a personal battle. You couldn't stop worrying, but you never truly faced it directly. The problem felt too big, too heavy, too much. But the moment you sat with it, really looked at what was going on, something shifted. You noticed patterns, dynamics, unspoken truths. The problem didn't magically disappear, but it changed. It became clearer, more approachable, less overwhelming. That is the observer effect in motion. Your awareness itself was altering the nature of what you were facing. This happens constantly, but most people write it off as coincidence or luck. They don't realize they're witnessing one of reality's most profound truths. Consciousness and experience aren't separate. They're intertwined, constantly shaping one another in ways most never see. And of course, when people hear this, skepticism arises. If observation changes reality, why don't people simply observe their way into a perfect life? Why do suffering and old patterns persist? Because truly understanding the observer effect isn't just knowing it exists. It's about understanding how it functions, and more importantly, how to work with it instead of against it. Observation isn't just looking. It requires a specific quality of awareness. It demands presence, clarity, and the willingness to see things as they truly are, not how you wish they were, not how you fear they might become. Most people think they're observing when they're actually just analyzing, spinning stories in their heads, judging, comparing, trying to assign meaning. But that's not observation. That's mental noise. Real observation happens when you step back from that noise, when you witness your thoughts without getting pulled into them, when you sense your emotions without being consumed by them, when you recognize your patterns without immediately trying to fix them. This kind of presence isn't our default state. We're taught to live in our heads, to overanalyze, worry, plan, anticipate. We're conditioned to believe that thinking alone solves problems. But thinking and observing are two very different states. Thinking is doing, observing is being. True observation isn't about trying to fix or change anything. It's not about forcing outcomes. It's about being a clear witness to what is. And paradoxically, this is where real change happens. Because the moment you try to use observation as a tool to control, it stops being observation. It becomes manipulation, and control is the opposite of observation. This is why many people feel frustrated when they first encounter the observer effect. They expect it to act like a magic trick, to erase their problems instantly. They observe with hidden expectations. But the observer effect isn't a shortcut or a hack. It's not something you do to get results. It's something that naturally happens when you are fully present, fully aware, fully willing to see reality as it is. When you reach that state of pure observation, reality becomes flexible, not in a fantastical way, but in a deeply practical one. You begin to see options you never noticed. Patterns become visible. Dynamics that once felt invisible reveal themselves. Problems that seemed impossible start unfolding their own solutions. Relationships that felt stuck reveal their core fractures. Behaviors that seemed unchangeable begin to soften and shift, not because you forced anything, but because your awareness made space for change to happen on its own. This isn't just about external change. When you truly observe, your inner reality transforms too. You start seeing yourself differently. You stop identifying with every passing thought and emotion. You realize you are not your thoughts, you are the one who notices them. You are not your emotions, you are the awareness that experiences them. This shift in identity from the observed to the observer is one of the most profound transformations a human can undergo. Once you grasp this, thoughts no longer control you. Emotions no longer drown you. You see them rise and fall like waves on the surface of something deeper, something steady, your consciousness. That awareness has always been there, beneath the noise, beneath the stories. And from that place of pure consciousness, you stop reacting and start responding. You stop being trapped and start creating. You're no longer dragged by your circumstances, you meet them with clarity. This is where the observer effect becomes a living experience, not just a concept. Once you see how it shapes reality, you can't unsee it. Once you experience what it feels like to truly observe, living unconsciously is no longer enough. This truth can be uncomfortable. It removes the luxury of blame. Once you see that you are a co-creator of your experience, you can no longer point to your childhood, your job, your relationships, or your bank account as the sole reason for your life state. And that can be frightening. It's easier to believe you're powerless than to accept your own influence. It's more comfortable to think change is impossible than to face the vast unknown of true awareness. Many prefer the safety of familiar suffering over the uncertainty of consciousness. They complain instead of observing. They analyze instead of witnessing. They live in their heads instead of their presence. But something in you knows better. Something in you recognizes that the way you've been approaching reality isn't the full story.
You wouldn't be here listening to this otherwise.
Something in you is ready to stop being a passive observer and start becoming an active participant in your own creation. The observer effect isn't about manipulating life. It's about seeing it clearly. And when you do, everything changes. You stop searching for happiness and start finding it in awareness itself. You stop waiting for perfect conditions and start discovering peace in the present moment. Every challenge becomes a practice. Every relationship a mirror. Every emotion a teacher. This is why the observer effect is so powerful. Once you see how consciousness and reality dance together, you can't look away. Once you taste the freedom of being the observer, you'll never again settle for being ruled by your mind or emotions. The world needs more people who can live like this. People who can observe without judgment, be present without control, hold space without resistance. People who can meet patterns without being consumed by them. Because when you understand the observer effect, not as theory, but as lived truth, you don't just change your life, you change the way you relate to existence itself. You become someone who can find clarity in chaos, peace in uncertainty, and creation in the face of fear. The observer effect isn't a scientific footnote, it's a doorway into a more conscious, more present, more alive way of being. And when you step through it, you begin to realize what was true all along. You were never separate from your reality. You were never powerless. You were never just watching. You've been creating it, moment by moment, through the quality of your consciousness. And once you understand this deeply, everything becomes possible. If this spoke to something inside you, hit like and subscribe. Let's keep exploring the unseen layers of reality, one truth at a time.